Hi, my name is Chris, and in this short video I want to show you how to quickly and easily add page numbers to your Captivate eLearning project. The first thing I want to do is I want to create a variable to hold the value of the page number. So I'm going to click on Project, Variables, Add New, and I'm going to call this variable page number. And because the first page is number 1, we'll set the value to 1 and save that. The next thing I need to do is display that somewhere, display the page number. So I'm going to do that using a text caption. Click on text, text caption. Obviously don't want it in the middle of the page. Let's put it down here on the bottom in the middle. I'm going to come over here to the Properties tab and click that. Then I'm going to double click on the text. Then I'm going to click on this X in the square brackets here, and if you hover over it, it says Insert Variable. When this pops up, I'm going to click Page Number. I'm going to leave the maximum length at 50. That is more than long enough for a page number variable, and click OK. Then I'll name this, and I'm going to call it Page Count. Then I'm going to go to the timing, and I want to change display for from specific time to rest of project. Then I'll click place object on top. And now we need to add some buttons to get from slide 1 to slide 2 to slide 3 to slide 4. And I'm actually not going to do that on these slides. I'm going to do it on the master slide. So I'm going to click Master Slide View from the Properties panel. And I'm going to add on this spot, well, I'm going to duplicate both of these slides. You'll see why in a second. And then if you've watched my videos before, you know I like to use shapes. So I'm going to use a rounded rectangle for the buttons. I'm going to draw a button over here. I'm going to double click in it, and I'm going to call it Next. And then I'm going to click Use this button, and I'm going to put an action on it. And the action I want to put on it, Project Advanced Actions, and I'm going to use an advanced action. I'm going to call it Next Slide. And what we're going to do is increment our variable by 1. So when somebody clicks that button, we're going to increase the value of that variable by 1. And then we're going to go to Next Slide. I'm going to save that action. I'm going to close this, and I want to set this action to that button. So click on the button, select Actions, Execute Advanced Action, Next Slide. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to apply it to this button, or to this slide, and this slide. Then I'm going to add my back button, and I'm going to add my back button to these slides. So I'm going to paste that next button again, and then I'm going to drag it over here. Change the text to back, and then I'm going to click over here on this folder to open this action, and then I'm going to click the plus sign and create a new action. I'm going to call this one Previous Slide or Prev Slide. Call this Nav and AV. And then for the back button, we want to decrement. We want to decrease the value of the variable. So when somebody goes backwards, it counts down. It counts backwards by 1. And then go to previous slide. And I'm going to save that. Close that action, and I'm going to come over here and change that to previous slide. And then I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put it on this slide, and this slide. And then I'm going to go back. I'll click Exit Master, and I'm going to come back over here. And as you can see, well, this worked out pretty well. The buttons are already where I need them at. If you need to change the button layout, you can click over here on Master Slide, and you could pick. I could pick that one if I needed the next or the back button on this slide, or I could pick that one and really mess things up. But we'll go back to this one, and everything looks pretty good. So let's preview it and see how things look. Okay, so it opens up in Chrome. On our first page, page number is 1. Next button's here. Next page, page number is 2. We have the back button show up. So it's not as perfect as I thought. This is wrong. We're missing a back button. But the count works, and it does count backwards. So let's go back and fix this. So on the third slide, I want this one. And just change that from the master slide, or from the master slide section of the properties panel over here. Let's preview this again. First slide, page number 1. Second slide is number 2. If we go back, it goes back to number 1. And everything looks pretty good. Now, obviously, this isn't the only way to do these buttons. You don't have to put them on the master slide. You could put them on the first slide. And have them show for the rest of the project. You could put the button on, put the next button on this slide, a next button on this slide, a next button on the third slide, and a back button on the second slide, third slide, and fourth slide. Doesn't really matter how you get the buttons there. The one thing you want to avoid is you don't want a back button on this slide. I'm going to switch this up, and I'm going to show you why. I'm going to do the same, well, I can't do the same thing with the last slide, but for the same reason you don't want a next button on the last slide. So if I preview it and I've got a back button on this first slide, there's no slide to go back to. But because this has decrement on it, it will change the value of the variable. So if I click back, it doesn't go anywhere, but it does change the page count. It will go negative. You don't want a back button on this first slide. So that's something to watch out for. And then of course next, there is somewhere to go, but and it navigates correctly, but your page count's wrong. So if you get stuck, if you've added back buttons and next buttons, and you get here and you're hitting back and your page number keeps changing, but the slide doesn't, or if you get here and you have a next button over here, and you hit next and it stays on this slide and it says page number 5, page number 6, page number 7. It's because these buttons, the action on them have decrement and increment, and even though there's nowhere to go, that decrement or increment's still going to work. So watch out for that. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've learned something you can apply to your projects. Until next time, happy captivating.